Good afternoon to you, Africa and South Africa, the world. My name is Sifiso Mahlangu. Welcome to Politiki. This is a special edition of Politiki as I give you details from Parliament this evening. In the year 2019, Advocate Bongani Bongo, former Minister of Intelligence, was arrested for allegedly trying to bribe Advocate Mthuthuzeli Vanara. In this hot seat tonight, one of the individuals who was there, who witnessed a lot of the meetings between Mr. Vanara and Mr. Bongo, will be chatting to me in the session. After that arrest, Mr. Bongo, ANC MP, was called to step aside in the ANC. He's then come back swinging, handling his place, but faced other allegations in Mpumalanga. But it seems there's more to the story. Ms. Shiham Lagkar chats to me about that day when the alleged bribery happened. Shiham, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so you were in Parliament. You worked for Parliament for 14 years.
That's good.
I saw your statement as it was leaked in the media, and I had, the desire to speak to you. So you worked for the Joint Committee on Ethics and Members' Interest, and you say it doesn't make sense. Bongani Bongo did not bribe Vanara. Why? Why do you say that?
Well, I think, let me first say thank you for the opportunity for allowing me today to speak out and set the record straight. Now that I'm no longer in the employ of Parliament and have had the discussions with my family, my close relatives, they encouraged me to say, no, they feel that I should go forward, and speak out and speak the truth of really what happened during that time when I was working there.
Okay, so Advocate Mthuthuzeli Vanara, who now is the head of legal at the SABC, accused Mr. Bongani Bongo of trying to bribe him. And that in turn had to do with the SABC inquiry. Mr. Vanara implied that Bongo had tried to bribe him in order for him to adapt or to amend some of the findings of the SABC inquiry. In the statement which I've seen, Mr. Vanara says he'd never met Mr. Bongo. So you worked in Parliament. How true is that?
Well, truth be told, I don't believe what Mr. Vanara is saying. Contrary to that, so many other things has happened since Mr. Bongo alleged bribed Mr. Vanara in 2017, like he has put in his affidavit.
Okay.
I'll just give you a little bit of a background quickly. In 2017, Mr. Bongo was an ordinary member when this alleged happened. I think what puzzled, and because I was central in that committee, I dealt with complaints that came in, and I worked very, very closely with the chairperson, which was responsible for the National Assembly, Mr. Amos Masondo.
Yeah.
So when this thing leaked in October 2017, all of us were shocked in the office because I personally saw Mr. Bongo several times move around in the precinct and on that floor. So I doubted, not just doubted, I don't believe what Mr. Vanara is saying. Because what emanated from the subcommittee hearing is in contradictory to what he was saying in his statement.
Okay, so Mr. Vanara then alleges Bongani Bongo tried to bribe him. Mr. Bongo gets arrested, and of course, as it is happening in the ANC, he gets called on to step aside as an MP. He's since resisted and still in power. But somebody watching at home, Shiham, will say, why are you speaking now? You were in that committee with Mr. Masondo, former mayor of Johannesburg. Why are you speaking right now? You're being labeled as a state witness here. Why are you coming to Bongo's defense at this point and not in 2017?
Well, during 2017, when I was appointed in that office since 2016, I was seconded, by the way, there. from 2016 up until 2019 June. I must rectify that. My contract terminated in June last year.
Yes.
So I had lots of time on my hands to think about what has happened. So whilst you're in that office of the Joint Committee on Ethics, you take an oath to secrecy and confidentiality.
Yeah.
So we were not allowed to speak out. But now that I'm free, I don't have to hide anymore. And with the support of my family, I can actually come out and say, but enough is enough now. It's enough that a person's reputation, character must be tarnished so much in the media where the media is refusing to see the other side of the story. I have watched Mr. Bongo on the media, and he has constantly said that he did not do that. And what has happened in the subcommittee hearing on the 5th of September 2018 is exactly what Mr. Bongo said. He did not do that. And if I can give you a little bit of a brief on that, is in that subcommittee hearing, or I should actually just go a little bit back. Because when this alleged happened in October, on the 26th, everybody raised questions in the subcommittee hearing. Why do you take so long? Why did it take you 16 days to go and write an affidavit? That was the first question that was asked. And then all hell has broken loose in the committee, or I should say drama happened in the committee, because it was discovered that Mr. Vanara was charged for domestic violence.
And Mr. Bongo had that document?
Well, it came out in a hearing. So how Mr. Bongo got it? According to him, it was Mr. Vanara who gave it to him.
Okay.
So
Advocate Vanara had been arrested for gender-based violence
That's
and abuse to his wife. And in that meeting, Advocate Bongo said, well, Vanara and I were having a conversation. It was about this, him beating his wife. Now, you don't know how Bongo could have gotten that information if it didn't come from Mr. Vanara. But is it possible that Mr. Bongo and Vanara had never met, or you didn't see them meet on that floor? Because according to the statement which I've seen, Vanara said he had no interaction with Mr. Bongo.
I don't believe that, because how I must be truth be told, whilst I was in that office, everybody else knew in that office of Mr. Vanara and the domestic violence except me. So after the hearing, people were saying, how could he speak about Mr. Vanara's personal issues? So for me, that was a clear indication that there must have been some sort of discussion prior to Mr. Vanara alleged that Mr. Bongo only met him once. He only met Mr. Bongo once, because members were questioning Mr. Vanara in the meeting. Why did it take you so long? So if somebody, like for instance, Mr. Mahlangu, if I know you, and I want to protect the relationship with you, that I have this friendship with you, I would hold off to certain things. You know, I wouldn't go out there to try to tarnish your name.
But one can argue, Shiham, and say Mr. Vanara had the constitutional right to report an incident when it happened. Maybe he took 15 days and then considered, maybe now I should report this this alleged bribery. But you say that wasn't the only thing that was said in that meeting.
No, there was drama in that meeting, if I must put it that way, because it was asked in the meeting that Ms. Sifiso Mahlangu had to recuse herself from the subcommittee hearing because she was implicated in Mr. Vanara's affidavit. So there was so much drama. I think the chairperson lost control of that.
Well, to give you a direct question, then, are you saying now in front of an international TV platform that this was a plot against Mr. Bongani Bongo?
Yes, I would say that. Yes, I would say that. And why I would? And
because you were confined to your position in Parliament, which is confidentiality, you couldn't speak. And
why, for me, the question is, why didn't Mr. Vanara tell me? Because myself and him were working so closely. We have the police on the precinct. On that day of question, he said he felt shocked, he felt shaken, but yet he went to go have lunch. He never came to talk to me about that. You understand my question? Whilst we were sharing so much information with regards to cases, why did it take Mrs. Baby Chawa 30 days or more than 30 days to write a 2-page memo to the Speaker, whilst the Speaker already has taken this very affidavit to the former President? Why did it take Parliament 30 days to write 2 pages to ask to appoint an acting registrar, but not relieving Mr. Vanara of his duty? So you had an acting registrar, you had another acting registrar that oversee Mr. Vanara's case. When that acting registrar left to take her son to the United States, they appointed a co-acting registrar. So we had many actors in that office. In addition to that, Mr. Vanara knew that my secondment ended in December 2017. He flawed the laws of Parliament, or labour laws, if I may put that. He put me on a panel to appoint his friend in the office. And his friend in the office, as the coordinator, knew of Mr. Vanara's affair. So there were so many intricacies that happened subsequent after this alleged bribe in
But
that
if I
office.
Google, which I did, Mr. Vanara's current responsibility, he's the head of legal at the SABC. So he handles this process in Parliament, levels allegations, but gets promoted, by the way, to a salary of over 2.2 million as head of legal in the SABC. Is this the residue of a plot? I don't know. I'm a political writer. Is this a reward for giving someone the head of Bongani Bongo? Is Vanara being rewarded for this?
Yes, I would say that. Because a month after Mr. Vanara, after the subcommittee hearing, Mr. Vanara got a job at the SABC. And he personally came to show me his contract of 2 million rand per annum for head of legal services for the SABC. And by the way, Mr. Vanara was the evidence leader for the SABC inquiry as well in Parliament. And some of my colleagues said that he didn't even complete the SABC report. So you tell me, how can that be right?
Okay, so Bongani Bongo is then charged. He's called to step aside, which he didn't. He's still an ANC MP, but he has that residue or that dark cloud over his head. But you've come today to say you were in that meeting. That didn't happen. You worked in that floor. In the day in question, Mr. Vanara was jolly. He even went to have lunch and refreshments after that. He didn't look like someone who was shocked. It took him 16 days to lay this complaint. It took them over a month to get the process started. It was only after that that Mr. Bongo was charged, after that case was opened. I asked, why have you been quiet for so long? You say it's because of the laws of Parliament. But in the affidavit, you are known as the state witness, Shiham. So why don't you tell this story to Shamila Batoy?
Well, I must rectify that I'm no state witness, because nobody informed me that I'm a state witness. It's all over the media, but nobody has made contact with me to say I'm a state witness.
No. So nobody told you that you're a state witness?
Nobody told me.
Okay, if you go to Google and put Bongani Bongo's name and the 2019 arrest, you come up as a state witness to that case.
I saw it there, but nobody came to tell me anything. There was no formal communication from the police, from the Hawks, from the MPA to say you're a state witness in this case.
Okay, so you're saying it's never been communicated to you that you will be a state witness at the Bongo trial?
No, it's never been communicated to me.
Okay, so since you were there and you say a dark cloud is hanging over Mr. Bongo's head, and after having a moment of reflection with your family, you're coming out to the media and this show, and I'm grateful for that. Why don't you take this to the NPA and say to Ms. Shamila Batoy, here, what's being done to Advocate Bongo is unconstitutional. It's an injustice, even to his human rights. Why don't you take that action?
I haven't considered that yet. With all the issues that's happening in the country, I must be truth, I haven't considered that yet. But what I have decided was that let me first speak out and clear the air and tell everybody that I was present there. I was instrumental in that matter, because there was many questions that I asked the chairperson that he couldn't answer, and I blamed the chairperson for not taking the responsibility to resolve the issue between Mr. Vanara and Mr. Bongo. In addition to that, there was many meetings that has happened, even with the chief whip, the former chief whip of the ANC on the precinct of Parliament. And subsequent to that meeting, the content of that meeting was leaked, and I don't know who leaked that content of that meeting, where the chief whip actually gave an instruction that we must deal with the members in that committee. for me, that was the biggest shock that I could ever, find myself in. Is this the ANC that we support? You understand?
What did Mr. Jackson Mthembu say at that meeting?
In that meeting, he said that we must deal with the members, and he was specific in that meeting.
What did deal refer to?
I don't know, but one of the members that he referred to was Mr. Mervyn Dirks, that we must deal with him. And by the way, my voice was on that recording because I was still the one who said that we must schedule Mr. Dirks' matter on the agenda.
Okay.
So the Joint Committee on Ethics was not formed to deal with members. It was to reprimand members and divert members away from the wrongdoing because they were public representatives. That was the purpose of the committee, and give them consultations in terms of how the code of ethics work of Parliament.
Yeah.
Not
my
deal with
producer, Mzamo, old journalist, is shouting in my ear, we've got to call Jackson Mthembu and Mthuthuzeli Vanara to try get their word for this. This is sensational. Okay, we'll be back. We must try and get Advocate Mthuthuzeli Vanara. He's now the head of legal at Parliament. And Ms. Jackson Mthembu, the woman South Africa knows as the state witness in the Bongo versus Vanara trial, says nobody ever told her that she was the state witness. She read it from the media. In several of those meetings in Parliament, in the Ethics and Interest Committee, she was instructed by Mr. Jackson Mthembu to deal with some members, some MPs in the ANC. And she says often and many times she saw Mr. Bongo and Mr. Vanara together. But in Mr. Vanara's affidavit, he says he only met Mr. Bongo in the day in question when Mr. Bongo gave him the offer to bribe him. We'll come back with the story. Very interesting. I see all the comments on the screen. Charge your device. The show continues. My name is Sifiso Mahlangu. This is Politiki.
To eat healthy food because it's delicious.
Make massive moves.
Would you like another one?
I love it.
I love this too. This is amazing. The grits are so creamy. Oh,
I take pride in my grits.
so flavorful.
I think that looks wonderful.
Yeah.
It's so incredible. Make massive moves with Starside.
Welcome back to the show. Welcome back to Politiki. This is channel 500 on Galaxy Universal Network. I'm watched on over 42 countries this evening across the African continent. If you're watching me from the palm of your hand on your cell phone, welcome to this conversation. In 2019, Advocate Bongani Bongo, ANC MP, was charged for allegedly attempting to bribe Advocate Mthuthuzeli Vanara. At the time, Vanara was consulting or worked in Parliament in the Legal Affairs Department. After that, Mr. Bongani Bongo was called upon to step down. He resisted. But now the lady South Africa knows as the state witness has come to get on the record to say since she left Parliament, where she couldn't speak because she had took an oath to confidentiality, now is finding her voice to say that alleged bribery did not happen. Her name is Shiham Lagkar. We continue this conversation right now. Welcome back, Shiham. So in the ethics committee, you take an oath and you're not allowed to say things that happened inside, of course, not to reveal to the media, and because some of that information is sacred or secretive, understandably. But take me to a conversation about the instruction you say you received from some ANC MPs to deal with particular individuals. And I'm asking this to try and source out from you if this alleged bribery case against Bongo is in fact that dealing with individuals?
I would say yes. In that meeting, it was myself, now the chairperson of the NCOP, Amos Masondo, the former co-chairperson, Amos Sensi, he's from KZN, and the whip to that committee, Mr. Bengu. The four of us, including the former chief, was in a meeting. How that content of that meeting was leaked, I don't know. But in that meeting, he gave an instruction to the co-chairpersons that this needs to happen. You need to deal with the members of that committee.
What did Mr. Masondo say? He is the chair of the National Council of Provinces right now.
Yes.
What did he say when
At that time,
Mr. Mthembu instructed him to deal with certain members of parliament?
Okay, and then in the Joint Committee on Ethics, there's different tiers in that Joint Committee on Ethics, because you have the Management Committee, where members of the ANC meet, who serves on that committee, where they set the agenda or set the tone for the full committee meeting. And you have the study group. The study group is where, for instance, with the Bongani Bongo matter, both the co-chairs were constantly called by the political heads of the institution, which was the Chief Whip and the Speaker of Parliament, the former Speaker of Parliament, Ms. Mbeti. They would come back and they would report in the ANC study group of what was discussed or what the instructions is to do. And on many occasions, and I can truthfully say to you, on many occasions, we've put Mr. Bongo's matter on the agenda. But in the subcommittee meeting, we could never reach a conclusion because members couldn't find consensus around Mr. Bongo. After that meeting was concluded in September, on the 5th of September, and they couldn't even get witnesses because there was no witnesses to the conversation between Mr. Bongo and Mr. Vanara. That meeting or that conversation happened in Mr. Vanara's office. So nobody is privy to that conversation. Nobody knows. It's a version of Mr. Vanara, it's a version of Mr. Bongo. But what transpired in a subcommittee meeting was completely different to what Mr. Vanara was saying in the public domain. So from the management perspective, that matter was constantly put on the agenda. But we could never find or could resolve the matter. I think it's the incompetence of the committee, it's the incompetence of the members to could actually see that there was a
and Mr. Masondo.
Of course, because he was heading the subcommittee meeting. But strangely enough, or coincidentally enough, if I must put that, they removed Mr. Masondo after he couldn't deliver on the mandate to remove Mr. Bongo. And they removed him a month later and they put him to the Joint Committee of Intelligence. So you tell me, is that not a political ploy? They removed him and they put Mr. Humphrey Mqikwana as the chairperson or the co-chairperson for the Joint Committee on Ethics, who knew nothing of what happening. That chairperson was the chairperson for communications, by the way. He was extremely, extremely unhappy about coming 2 months before Parliament closed for the elections to come and sit in a committee that he knew nothing about. So, and from that point of view, I can truthfully say it was sheer incompetence, or there must have been political meddling in terms of how to deal with members of Parliament.
So at that meeting, you get there, you have some briefing notes, I assume, to say these are the discussions that we'll be having in this particular session. On the day in question, when Mr. Bongo and Mr. Vanara came, what were some of those discussions when they were sitting opposite each other in Parliament?
Are we talking about now, are you referring to the subcommittee hearing?
Yes, in the subcommittee hearing.
In the subcommittee hearing, forgive me for saying that, but Mr. Vanara was crying tears. He was emotional. He was extremely emotional. But when the truth came out in the committee, it was a fight between Mr. Bongo and Mr. Vanara. Because Mr. Bongo was saying, but this is really what happened between the two of us. We were discussing your issue of the GBV, of the gender-based violence, domestic violence. This was the issue. And that was a huge argument in the meeting. The meeting was scheduled for 10 in the morning until 12:30, but it took 10 hours because the two of them had this fight. Not just that, but they brought in a witness, according to Mr. Vanara, which is Mr. Mkumi, that's also referred in his affidavit. Mr. Mkumi was his passenger or his driver in the car. How could he have known that it was Mr. Bongo who called Mr. Vanara whilst Mr. Vanara was telling Mr. Mkumi it was Mr. Bongo. So he's not privy to even the conversation between Mr. Vanara and Bongo, but he came to the meeting. He didn't even last 2 minutes because he said in the meeting that
he wasn't there.
He wasn't there.
At the
point
when this bribery allegedly happened,
yeah,
he wasn't there. So he couldn't...
Not just the bribery, it was prior to the bribery even, because apparently, according to Mr. Vanara in his affidavit, he said Mr. Bongo called him, and that is what he told Mr. Mkumi. Mr. Bongo called him. But Mr. Mkumi cannot verify that it was Mr. Bongo who called Mr. Vanara.
So take me to a conversation of how the ethics committee works. Because I don't think South Africa had understood that this matter started in the ethics committee before it landed at the police station. So was it an incident that this committee cannot sort it out, and then Mr. Vanara went and laid a charge at the police station? What was the interval between the matter leaving the ethics and interest committee to going to the police station in Cape Town?
The Ethics Committee consists of all political parties of Parliament. It's a nomination process that happens for members to be appointed to the Joint Committee on Ethics. Members take an oath, and if there's a matter that arises, the members go through a process of training on the code. Mm-hmm. After that, should matters arise, such as complaints, the committee is split. So now we, as the administration, we write to the various chiefs of the political party to nominate a member from his party that's already serving on the joint committee, yes, to serve on the subcommittee. Emanating after that, let me just ask you again, what did you wanted to know, understand?
Like, when did it leave the committee to go to the police station? Because now there are two separate investigation engines. The one in Parliament, which is an internal framework, and a case has been opened, which means the police must now investigate.
Mr. Vanara never opened that case. Let me rectify you there. It was the opposition party, the DA, who went to go and make a case against Mr. Bongo based on Mr. Vanara's affidavit. But according to Mr. Vanara, he says he's an officer of the court. So if you know the Combating Corrupt Activities Act, what is the first step that you do? Is you report a crime.
Yes.
He never reported the crime. It took 16 days before he could even lay and put down an affidavit. That was one of the questions Mr. Monakere, one of the members that was serving on the subcommittee, was asking him. It takes him a day or two to write a speech. Why did it take him 16 days to write an affidavit?
Okay.
You know.
Right.
So the other question that you were posing in terms of how the workings is the matter, a complaint comes to the office, it doesn't go to the speaker, but this complaint went directly to the former speaker, and then it was handed to Honorable Masondo, who's now the NCOP chairperson, and then it was registered with the office. So it actually went a via route. It didn't come directly to us. So we did not, or members did not, or Mr. Vanara did not lay a complaint at the police station. It was the opposition party who went to go and lodge a complaint at the police.
So the opposition, the Democratic Alliance, laid the complaint, although we'd formally been given the impression that it was Mr. Vanara,
yes,
who laid the charge. How do the two processes then work? You have the DA laying a charge, and then Mr. Bongo gets charged, so the police should be investigating. But you have another investigation in Parliament before the committee. How do those parallel investigations run?
I think from the onset, when this affidavit was circulating in the media, it took the acting secretary took more than 30 days to write to the speaker to say, please appoint an acting registrar, which we already had, and then she had to inform the acting registrar. So when the speaker signed off on the 30th of November to appoint the chief legal advisor, it took her from the 30th of November until Mr. Bongo was relieved of his duties in February to inform them that she will oversee the matter. So for me, and by the way, Mr. Bongo complained, he sincerely complained to the committee, and he was asking, why the delays? Why are you not informing what is the charge? Why not sending me information? He kept on saying, and Parliament delayed in the processes of informing Mr. Bongo that this is the process that we intend to undertake. So it was within Mr. Bongo's right to take Parliament to court to say, please conclude because you are dragging my name through the mud. This is something I've been talking to the chairperson all the time. This is not right, chairperson. You must intervene. If needs be, you need to speak to the speaker. He never did that. He never complied. He let it continue in the media. He allowed the media, if I might put that way, to tarnish a member's name where there was no evidence, there was no exchange of bribery, there was no exchange of money, there was nothing. It's a hearsay, it's my word against your word. That's what it's all about.
In the 14 years you've served this country in the National Assembly in Parliament, did you ever come across a case such as this? Was there political interference, and there possibly has been many times? That's the avenue of politicians anyway. But was there such political intervention that a man gets charged by the police and you're waiting for 2 separate reports, and the committee fails to make progress on that?
Yes, we had many cases like that. Mohapi, we had to wait. I think Mr. Mohapi was from the Free State. We had to wait for his matter to be concluded by the court. When the court found him guilty, Parliament found him guilty. So with Mr. Bongo, he was literally forcing the hand of Parliament to conclude the matter. We couldn't conclude the matter. And every time Mr. Bongo's matter appeared on the agenda, the chairperson would say it's sub judice. We cannot intervene in the matter. So they were waiting on the courts. So in June 2019, before I left, the courts took a decision to say they're not going to meddle into this. The matter must be resolved by Parliament, and to date, the matter has not been resolved by Parliament.
I want your personal opinion on this one. Having served Parliament in the Ethics Committee, Mr. Bongo got arrested and charged and is being called in to step aside. But last week, the Speaker of Parliament was in court. She was charged for cruelty to animals. Nobody has called on her to resign. What's your opinion on that?
Well, she should step aside because she's leading or heading the institution. It's her role to step aside because it's unethical behavior. If you are charged in court, you must step aside.
Okay. Yeah, let's come back after the break. Shiham is here all the way from Cape Town to talk to me on the matter between Bongo, Advocate Bongo, and Advocate Mthuthuzeli Vanara. It seems to be the battle of advocates. Is the law being taken for a chance here? And it really comes across from her rendition that Parliament is used once again to fight political battles. I see all your comments. I'll read 2 or 3 after the break. My name is Sifiso Mahlangu. Don't go away.
The day will come when these measures are no longer needed. Until then, however, we must ensure that all our people receive adequate support. We look ahead to a better future. I have faith in the strength and the resilience of ordinary South Africans who have proven time and time again throughout our history that they can rise to any challenge that is presented to our country. We shall recover. We shall overcome.
Welcome back to the show. This is Politiki, a special edition. We speak about what really happened in Parliament in the weeks leading up to Mr. Bongani Bongo's arrest. Now, Advocate Mthuthuzeli Vanara alleged that ANC MP, Advocate Bongani Bongo, attempted to bribe him. Now, we've just learned that it was in fact the Democratic Alliance, the official opposition that laid a charge against Mr. Bongani Bongo, leading for him to be arrested. Now, Shiham, who sat in that committee, the Ethics and Members' Interest Committee in Parliament, says there was no way that Bongo was allegedly bribed Vanara. In that institution, understanding the privacy of Parliament and what you had to do, realizing that this happened, you're now speaking out. Have you attempted to engage the ANC, the current Chief Whip, the Speaker of Parliament? I asked if you had intended to write to Shiham Lagkar to say you were there on that floor, you were in that committee, and to air your views concerning that.
Well, I do appreciate the concern, and yes, I think I will write to Shiham Lagkar and I will give my view of what transpired in that subcommittee hearing, and also subsequent to what happened afterwards. In my view, sorry, can you just repeat?
Have you spoken to Mr. Vanara?
Mr. Vanara was alienating all of us, by the way, after the hearing. He hasn't engaged with any of us for that period or the month before he left for the position at the SABC. So no, I haven't spoken to Mr. Vanara at all. I haven't heard of him at all, but it seems that the media is praising Mr. Vanara for coming out, and the media hasn't taken its time to investigate the truth behind this.
Did you take questions from the media? Because
no,
many of the media have reported that you were the state witness. Did you ever answer to any media inquiries, any reports on your state witness, your state affidavit?
No, I did not. I think I was too scared. I must be truthful. I was too scared because I feel that the media could tear me apart just to protect Mr. Vanara. And I felt like, no, that was not my space to engage the media.
Why do you say the media would tear you apart to protect Mr. Vanara? Why do you suggest that the media wants to protect Mr. Vanara?
I think it's common knowledge. We've seen what the media has done at the Zondo Commission, and the NPA and the Walks is acting on what the media is writing about members such as Nomvula Mkonyana and members like that. So members had to go and defend themselves at the Zondo Commission. So I don't trust the media. I must be truthful to you. I don't trust the media. They tear you apart. They write stories about you that's untrue. So I haven't engaged with the media.
Okay,
it's the first time that I'm engaging.
This is the first time. Okay. And you're speaking as someone, of course, who was there, who was in that committee, and this is the first time you're speaking out. Yes. Okay. I thank you for your strength. Thank you for coming to chat with me. In the media, and I hope that your voice echoes across this country. But just for that interest, I think do write to the NDPP, Ms. Shiham Lagkar. Also write to the PP advocate Busisiwe Mkhwebane. And maybe that story will come to conclusion. Of course, as journalists, we'll certainly be following it up.
Thank you.
That's my lead for tomorrow. So
thank you.
We'll certainly be following
I
up.
will do that.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your audacity.
Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate it. Okay, that was Shiham Lagkar, all the way from Cape Town, formerly with the Joint Committee on Ethics and Members' Interest in Parliament, having sat in that meeting between Bongo and Mr. Vanara, saying that did not happen. We'll surely be following this story on the print and also on Politiki. I have a keen interest on seeing how this one will roll out. Thank you for watching tonight. I see all your comments coming from 42 countries across the continent. This is Channel 500, Galaxy Universal Network. My name is Sifiso Mahlangu. Follow me on all my social media handles. This conversation doesn't need to end here. Let's vent it out on social media. Thank you for watching from me, from our studios in Midrand in Johannesburg. Good evening to you.